Friends, Kathryn here from Research Rockstar, and today I'd like to talk about training plans. Whether it's for you or your team or a colleague, I want to make sure that I share some information with you so that if you do want to think about making plans for training, that you've got some easy steps to follow so that the process won't be too onerous. So one of the things that we do know when we talk about training plans is that obviously there are a lot of things that can go into it. So it can feel a little overwhelming. Very often, especially at the beginning of a new year, our intent is to create some sort of professional development program for the year. Again, either for ourselves as individuals or maybe for a team. But sometimes sitting down and creating that training plan as part of that professional development can be really hard. It's something that can be very easy to put off, especially for those of us who do a lot of work, as those of us in market research and insights do, that is very project oriented. So it always seems like the next deadline's right around the corner. And so it can be really easy to put these things off. So I want to make sure that we make it as easy as possible. And my advice is to simplify. So it can be a great idea. And if you have the time to really put together a robust training plan, to think about it in terms of phases and to have, a long-term multi-phased kind of training plan that might get somebody, say, like a 2 or 3 year ideal horizon. That sort of thing is a great exercise and can be fantastic. But not all training plans have to be that complicated. Sometimes it's really just about setting what are my near-term professional development goals? What are the skills I need to acquire in order to be successful this year? So the long-term strategic planning, of course, is always wonderful, but in lieu of that, if you don't have enough time, certainly you can at least create a training plan that will get you through the next year and also give you enough confidence that you feel like, okay, I've made some careful decisions. I know what I've committed to for the year for my professional development. And part of the simplification has to do with just clear priorities, right? So it's very easy to look, for example, at a catalog of market research training courses and say, gosh, there's a lot of things here that I would love to take, or I'd love to have people on my team take. But we have to really prioritize. So I'm going to show you some examples of prioritizing content that you want your students to learn or that you want to learn for yourself so that you can choose the smaller set of more manageable training that's going to make sense. I also want to make sure that when we're thinking about how to simplify our training plans, that we think in terms of a realistic timeline, especially in a profession like market research and insights that's changing a lot these days. What we need in this year might end up being very different than what we need next year. So planning a realistic, maybe a slightly shorter time frame also does have a benefit, but we also don't want it to be too short. And sometimes in training, people will refer to as drive-by training, which is this idea that maybe in a particular company that training is offered sort of in unexpected bursts. You never know when you're going to get it, and you never know when it's going to come again, but you feel like you've been hit, right? So it's drive-by training. And the problem with drive-by training is that there's actually been a lot of research that shows that employees are more likely to retain new knowledge and new skills if it's part of a longer-term program. So that they get some repetition, they get a build, and that's what helps to make sure that the new information is actually retained and is likely to be used in real work. So we want to avoid that drive-by training. So what I want to do now is I'm going to show you some examples, and these are examples that I think will help you to meet all of those goals. You'll be able to prioritize some content, plan something that's maybe more of a realistic time frame, and also give you enough options so that you can avoid that sort of drive-by training. And so the examples I'm going to give you are going to be for 3 specific areas that hopefully one of these will resonate with you, whether we're trying to develop qualitative research skills, survey research skills, or skills around writing research reports. So those 3 are just examples. Obviously, there are many different types of training goals that you may have for yourself or your team. But let's start with qualitative research. All right, so how do we keep this simple? We have to think precisely about what it is that I want them to get out of qualitative research training. So if I have people on my team and I'm thinking, all right, I definitely want to amp up our qualitative research skills, we want to write our goals in a way that's really super concrete. For example, maybe one of your goals is that anybody who takes qualitative research training should be able to leave that training able to really actively participate in planning meetings. That means that they would be able to come to the planning meeting and contribute ideas. They would have an understanding of what the best practices are around the sequencing of steps in order to execute professional quality qualitative research. So they would understand how to plan, they would understand what the likely milestones are, and so forth. So that would be an example of something pretty precise. At the end of the training, it'll be successful for me if they are able to now participate in planning qualitative research projects. Another one might be, I want to make sure that anybody on my team can discuss qualitative research methodologies with confidence. And so, for example, maybe you want to make sure that people on your team who maybe in the past they primarily did a lot of focus groups, but maybe today you are offering a broader range of qualitative research methods. Maybe you're doing now traditional and online focus groups, and you're doing mobile ethnography applications, and you're doing something cool and interactive, maybe in an online community or a private panel. So there are a lot of different things that we can be doing with qual these days. And of course, in-depth interviews, ethnography, et cetera, et cetera. So if one of my goals is to make sure that my researchers can discuss qualitative methodologies with confidence, I'm going to want to make sure that they're getting exposed in that training to more than just one or two qualitative methodologies. I'm going to want to make sure that it's going to cover a breadth. I might also have as one of my goals that at the end of the qualitative training, in order for it to be successful, I want my students to be able to anticipate and mitigate known common challenges in qualitative research. For example, in qualitative research, we all know that one of the big challenges we have is with recruiting, finding the authentic people that we want to have participate in the qualitative research. And depending on the target population of interest or the product category you're doing research for, that can be really, really difficult. So that's the kind of thing where you may say, I want to make sure that my qualitative researchers will be able to anticipate common challenges so that they don't get caught off guard, and hopefully they can take preemptive steps to mitigate those challenges. So again, these are just examples, but this is the kind of thinking that you may find helpful. So if you're thinking about your training and you're saying, okay, these are the things that I really need to make sure happen, that will help you to select among the many different training options that you may have available to you. Oh, here's another one. We want to make sure that our qualitative researchers can summarize the results of qualitative data with rigor. This is actually a really cool thing, because now that many of us are doing qualitative research at scale, as we say these days, there can be greater challenges in summarizing the information effectively. So this could be something else that you may want to say, I need to make sure people can do this. This is something that I want to see an improvement in our skills. So once you have either these statements or something sort of parallel that's really precise about what you need that training to do, it'll be super easy for you then to figure out what training courses your team is going to need. So in this case, and totally biased on my part, I'm mapping those particular goals with Research Rockstar courses. Now, of course, there are other training options out there. Some folks will choose Research Rockstar Training if you're doing e-learning. If you're interested in real-time or on-demand e-learning, of course, there's great training options also available from Berkeley and the University of Georgia. Some of the master's programs that are out there are also really awesome. But from my totally biased point of view, if I were to take the objectives that we had on the previous page, these are the courses at Research Rockstar that would meet. So if those were my goals for my team, then I'd want my team to complete these three courses: the focus group project management course, the mobile and online qual research methods course, and the writing qualitative research reports course. Now, altogether, that's 18 hours of course time. And I know it might feel like a lot to get in, right? That's 18 hours in the classroom or watching the videos and homework time. So really, it's a commitment, and I totally get it, but you don't have to do it all at once. So typically what we'll do is we'll recommend that people, once they pick the courses that are the most logical for them, these three in our hypothetical example, then you can decide what sequence is going to make the most sense for you and what frequency. Like some folks will say, I can do one course a month. That's what I feel comfortable committing to. Some people are more aggressive. That's great too. Another topic might be developing survey research skills. Maybe you have folks on your team who you really want to amp up their survey research skills. You want them to be a little bit more rigorous, perhaps. And so here's some, again, hypothetical things that we may want as our objectives. I might want to say, hey, I want people who are doing survey research on my team to be able to specify their planning parameters. They need to be able to understand what all the things are that need to be documented about the project's parameters in order for us to execute it. So that might be one of our goals. Another goal might be we need to make sure that they understand how to design not just good questionnaires, but questionnaires that will really precisely support the stated project goals. And that is a skill. Another skill is that you might want to make sure that they can employ various types of scales correctly. That is, you may find that you've had folks in the past who may over-rely on 5-point rating scales. We've all seen those surveys, right? And there are a lot of other options out there. So you might want to say, gosh, for this to be successful, I really need to make sure that my team members can know when to use not just a Likert scale, but they know when to use a semantic differential or a constant sum or a rank order or something else. And they know what the different types of wording options for the scales are going to be most effective. So that can be a big one for a lot of teams. And maybe you also want the people doing this survey training to also leave it being able to really do a great job on reading and interpreting the data analysis. That doesn't mean they're necessarily the same person that's creating the data analysis. They might not be creating, say, the banner tables or other statistical output, but they need to be able to read it and interpret it so that they can find those key findings that address the project objectives. Again, these are just examples. You may have other types of things that you would say, gosh, at the end of this training, I need them to be able to do this other thing. That's totally cool. Maybe yours is about, I need them to leave the survey research training knowing how to get more value out of open-ended questions, right? There's tons of different things that you could potentially want. So try to come up with a few statements that really captures it. In this hypothetical case, again, we've got some Research Rockstar courses, surprise, surprise, our questionnaire design course, questionnaire design 201. We do have the course on open-ended questions and, of course, quantitative data analysis. And that's not a course where people are doing it hands-on. The hands-on work, we teach a course on Excel, doing statistical analysis in Excel, and we also have the SPSS courses. But being able, again, to understand data analysis is really important, whether or not you're the person who's creating it. So again, that would be another hypothetical example. And then for my last example, let's talk about writing research reports. This is a really important topic these days. I mean, it's always an important topic, but it's especially important these days because client expectations for written reports has changed a lot in recent years. The expectations around the look of the reports, and the format of the reports, the length of the reports, and new expectations even in terms of the types of synthesis and types of writing that they're going to see, for example, in the executive summary has changed. So this is a really great topic. And again, you may have some very specific things that you want. So in my hypothetical example here, I might say, my goal is to make sure that my team members can effectively summarize complex qualitative and or quantitative data for business audiences. So my phrase here, business audiences, is really intentional, right? I'm not writing for other market researchers. I want to make sure I'm writing for a business audience. And that our goal is to have, quote, client-ready reports. So the phrase client-ready is something that we see a lot in market research. I really like it because I think it speaks to this idea of it's not just a good report, it is a client-ready report. This is going to thrill my clients. But it does raise the question of what is client-ready? What makes a report client-ready? Now, again, there's some things that I think we would all agree make a report client-ready, but you may have specific things because of the clients you serve. So in a hypothetical example, I might say, I want to make sure that my team members know how to avoid the data dump. You know, they're going to write reports that are actually very well synthesized, very precise, very concise. I might also have a requirement where I want to make sure that they are able to look at some complex data and prioritize the top 3 to 5 findings. You know, what are those? If a reader or a client is only going to remember 3 things from this research, what are those things? Now, from this training, have they learned to do that? Have they learned not only to come up with what the key findings are, but to prioritize them, again, for a business audience? And maybe my third one is I need to make sure that the written report is going to help my client, my business client, use the research. So I need to make sure that the researcher is presenting the results in a way that makes it easy for my client then to actually take action with it. And so if those are my requirements, great. Again, you may have different ones. You may have a requirement around just improving basic writing skills, in which case we do have the writing boot camp. But, obviously different teams are going to need different things in terms of writing. But in this hypothetical example, this would lead me to recommend either our qualitative and or quantitative research reports course. So again, you have a lot of training options out there these days. What I would say is, try to think about really what it is you need to get out of that training. Come up with your 2 or 3 things that you need to make sure that at the end of the training, if they get these things from the training, then I know it's going to be successful. So I hope that exercise was useful. Maybe some of the examples I shared resonated with you. I've got a few more examples on the Research Rockstar blog and an article on the same topic where we talk about additional recommendations for things like developing consultative skills, a very hot topic these days, advancing research methods, and even for onboarding new researchers. So if your team is growing and you want to make sure you have some sort of onboarding program so that all new team members are taking the same basic training, it creates a nice foundation. It makes sure that you have a common language across the team. As many market research and insights team managers know, people come into our field from very diverse backgrounds, diverse educational backgrounds, and a little bit of level setting, a little bit of common foundation can really help when you've got people who are coming from such different experiences and educational backgrounds. I hope that was helpful for folks. If you have any questions, you can always contact us at info@researchrockstar.com. If you've enjoyed this conversation on either YouTube or on Apple Podcasts, please do like us, subscribe, and review. And if you have any questions at all, you can also add them here in the comments. Thanks, folks. Have a great day.